I just got my first new international envelope. It's from France. Fortunately, I can't show it on here because it's got my address on one side and the seller's on the other, but let's open it. First, I just want to say sorry about all the noise. They're doing some construction at the apartment building I live at. Let's see what this is. Don't remember getting anything from France, so I guess I'll be surprised by whatever this is. Wrapped in a piece of paper. Let's see, what do we have? Oh, neat. $1,000 francs from a West African state. It's got an A on the front. Let's see what country that is. So I just checked, and A stands for Ivory Coast. I actually have another one of these banknotes from 1968. It doesn't have a date on it like this one, but I checked the signatures on the front. According to those, that means this was issued sometime between 1977 and 1979. I really like the design on this banknote. You got the man and the woman on the front. We got the giraffe over here. We got this scene on the back, which I think is pretty neat. Let me pull up my phone flashlight and see if I can get the watermark on this to appear. I don't know if this will work or not. You can just vaguely see it, but we got another figure here. It looks kind of like the guy already shown there. That's pretty neat. For comparison, here's a banknote from 1968. The reason I can tell the dates of these banknotes is because of the signatures on the front. They switched between the different issues, and even though they don't have a date, they're pretty identifying. It's the same design, apart from the signatures though. The new one I got is from Courbevoie near Paris. This one came from somewhere here in the US, don't remember the exact location. And these banknotes are pretty interesting because the currency that they are, the CFA franc or the Cefa, is actually pretty controversial now. Now, for context, I should note that even though the CFA franc or the Cefa is considered one currency, there's actually two Cefas, one for the West African states and one for the Central African states. Just for show, I'm going to show some of my Central African Cefas, including 3 new ones. I actually kept the envelope for when I show these. They're from Henderson, Nevada. I'm going to start with the 3 new ones because those are pretty neat looking. So they're a little set. First, we got the 500 francs with a farm scene. The 1,000 francs with what appears to be a maternity ward. And the 2,000 francs with a little rainforest on the back and a parrot. And also a fourth one, which I already had, from 1986. These new ones are from 2020. And this one, so now they just do a universal issue, but this, and they still had like the West African, they would put letters on it. This one has an N. You'd see a map on the front showing the states. And looks like logging on the back. So I just checked on my new Mista account, and the N code stands for Equatorial Guinea. Now, Equatorial Guinea wasn't a French colony, they were a Spanish colony, but after they became independent, they decided to join the Cefa with the Francophone countries. Similarly, in West Africa, Guinea Bissau, which was a Portuguese colony, also decided to join the Cefa. And the reason the Cefa was created, it was in 1945 by Charles de Gaulle, and he created it for the French colonies of French West Africa, French Equatorial Africa, both of which have now been split into multiple countries, alongside Togo and Cameroon, which were German colonies that were directly adjacent to the two previous, but were not part of it because they were seized from Germany after World War One. Now, I don't know how long Charles de Gaulle intended the CFA to last, but his purpose for creating it was to secure France's economic interests in their African colonies. They wanted a franc with a different exchange rate so that they could export goods from these colonies in a much easier way, because previously the francs used in these colonies were essentially just extensions of the French franc that really didn't have their own exchange rate. Now, as you might expect, the CFA was pegged to the French franc for obvious reasons. And although French West Africa and French Equatorial Africa, alongside Cameroon and Togo, became independent countries, the first two having split into multiple due to their size, they continued to use the CFA, which was still pegged to the French franc, and today the euro, since France has joined the Eurozone in the European Union. Now, although African leaders like Alassane Ouattara of Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, who himself was an economist, have praised the CFA for its stability, it's still pretty controversial for, among other things, its colonial origins and the fact that the nature of the way it is set up, which includes each user country's reserves having to be 50% kept in a French bank account within the French treasury, have sort of resulted in a big economic problem in which these countries are essentially dependent on imports and exports and really can't develop their own domestic economies, as well as the CFA having been devalued in the 1990s, which has resulted in some significant drag down of its value. Although the CFA is praised for being stable, which among African currencies really isn't a common trait, it hasn't really done much to secure economic success because just four of the CFA using countries are not considered least developed countries, and the four that aren't still aren't that well off either. So it hasn't really done much to guarantee good development within the countries that use it themselves in independence. Now, many political figures, African and otherwise, have spoken out against the CFA. In 2019, Idris Deby of Chad, or I think it was 2015, I'm not sure, spoke out against the CFA, complaining about how it was preventing African countries from forming domestic economies and essentially making them dependent on imports and exports, and also the French economy. Outside of Africa, an Italian politician named Luigi Di Maio, I think he may have been a minister of foreign affairs, although I don't recall, in I think it was 2019, made a comment about how a lot of the migrants drowning in the Mediterranean trying to get to Italy were from CFA using countries, and pointed out how, once again, the CFA was not fostering domestic economies, leaving them in a poorly developed place, and essentially forcing them to go on these dangerous journeys. He directly blamed the CFA for the migrants' deaths. Now, this message was not received well in countries like France, although a lot of people in Africa really praised Mayo for it, and they held him in high regard for it. It is also worth noting that a significant amount of the controversy regarding the CFA is very political in nature, specifically around its colonial origins. A lot of people see it as a form of monetary imperialism, and a lot of activists in Africa have protested against it. One activist, whose name I unfortunately cannot recall, actually got arrested in Senegal because he destroyed a CFA banknote. I think it was while he was making a music video, and that caused a bit of a sensation in Senegal, and he got a lot of support for doing that. It is worth noting that the CFA is still used because of it has a convenience aspect to it. A lot of these African countries trade between each other, and it's very easy to just use one currency instead of having to exchange constantly. However, four countries have left the Cefa. They were Mauritania, Mali, Guinea, and Madagascar. Madagascar is basically completely disconnected from any of the other Cefa countries, so the convenience appeal really wasn't there. So they decided to leave. They made their own currency. It's called the Ariary. I think I might just mispronounce that. It's spelled Ariary. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And the reason Guinea and Mali left was most likely for political reasons. It was worth noting that Mali did rejoin. Mauritania and Guinea have not, as well as Madagascar, and their currencies haven't done so well. Personally, I think Mauritania's reasons for leaving may be cultural because they're much more culturally similar to Northern African countries than the West and Central African countries the CEFA is connected to, but that's just my theory. As far as I can tell, there aren't going to be any significant changes to the Central African CFA anytime soon, but the West African CFA might be seeing one. See, the West African countries that use the West African CFA are also members of ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. And ECOWAS has a plan to take the CFA and turn it into their own currency called the ECO. Also, since I don't think I mentioned it yet, Cefa, it's basically the word is spelled CEFA. And the reason they want to convert it into the ECO is because not only will it be used in the Cefa states, it will be used in the other states in ECOWAS, including Nigeria and Ghana, as well as a few others. And it'll be seen, they'll keep it as sort of like a convenience thing because the countries, once again, they trade between each other, but it'll be more African controlled currency, which has a very strong appeal to it. Now, there are a few concerns, especially regarding Nigeria, considering they hold 2/3 of those countries' wealth. There are concerns Nigeria might be able to have an undue influence on it, but the plan still has significant support. Unfortunately, this was actually originally brought up in 2003, and the most recent time it was brought up again was 2020. It's still being delayed, but in my opinion, I think it's going to eventually end up happening sooner or later. I couldn't tell, but it has such widespread support. I think it's pretty much inevitable that with the plan that has been made, it's probably going to happen. Subject matter of this video in mind, I want to leave a few questions for my viewers. Do you think that the African countries that use the CEFA should keep using it? Do you think that the plan to switch the CEFA to the ECO in West Africa is a good idea? Do you think that the CEFA is a form of monetary imperialism? I want to hear your answers in the comment section to questions like these and others. And that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Comment if you have any opinions. And that's it. Have a good day.